going to get a better tree, a faster tree, a bigger caliper if you grow on the ground. 90% of the nursery stock in the United States is not grown in the ground unless it comes out of the northwest and is shipped to the northeast. Almost everything in California is grown in containers, like you see here. These are 5-year-old, coming on 6, Toyogawa junipers, and they're 1.25 inch diameter, and they're 2 feet tall. Last year they finally rooted out of the bottom of the can into the ground, and then they grow a lot faster.
What's the advantage of growing in the pot versus growing on the ground?
Well, in the pot is not so hard because you can pick it up and move it around, and you don't have to have good soil or anything like that. But it helps with production when they're smaller. But when you want to get a tree big, there's no doubt that putting it in the ground will get there quicker. The problem is when you put it in the ground is you got to get it out of the ground. And that can become quite the struggle if you don't have free labor around that's young and strong. So having watched nursery stock grow for years, I had a habit of letting my maples root out into the ground. It does several things. One, it stops them from blowing over in the wind. 2, it gives them access to a little bit more water if I have an irrigation problem. And 3, they grow better. But I have learned over the years that you really want to start with a pot, and then you take it out when it gets big enough for it to kind of handle something, and you take a pot and you set it on the ground. But you want to be careful which pot. You don't want this one.
Why not?
This one's got a hole in the middle, and when it comes to taking it up, you got to stand on your head and put your nose on the ground to reach in there and cut that root.
Ah, because you can't. There's no access for you.
With this pot, with no hole in the bottom, and they come in all sizes like this.
And only holes on the side.
And only holes on the side. So when you want to take this out of the ground, you take your axe or your shovel and you cut it 6 times, and it's in your hands and movable. So this is cheap. You can buy these at landscapers' yards, or sometimes retail nurseries will have them sitting around. And if you pay about $1 a piece, you're probably in the right ballpark. The other thing you can do to grow on the ground is a grow bag. This one's kind of shot from the sun. They have 2 kinds. One you bury all together. I don't like those because they run into the same problems with trying to dig them. But this has a bottom that is significantly different in structure than the top.
Okay.
So you pack this real tight and you set it down on the ground, and it roots out of here. But this fabric gives you the benefit of access to bigger water column and the nutrients in the ground. And you can just reach up when the bag gets full, grab the tree and just give it a quick jerk, and it comes with you. And it won't wilt.
So you got an advantage of barrier in this case.
Yeah, you don't have to dig it. The roots don't circle and too much in the bag, and you can go up in August and take a maple that's planted in this bag and been rooted in the ground 4 or 5 years, give it a couple of sharp jerks and take it with you, and it'll never wilt or cause any damage.
So you're suggesting growing in a pot on the ground,
yeah,
for the advantage of almost in-ground type of items.
You get the same advantage as putting it in the ground. What you want to do is take this sort of pot, put your plant in good potting soil, not bonsai soil, bury it, put dirt up around the holes to keep them from being dry, because when the roots hit warm air, they're gonna die. So they typically only root out in the fall or winter. But if you put that up there, they'll root out as soon as they get there. The only thing that you have to really be careful about is to put your water inside the pot. If you don't put your water inside the pot, sooner or later, all the feeder roots in there will die, and all you'll have is support roots or structure roots. And so when you cut it, you'll cut most of the roots that actually feed the tree and take up water. So if you water from the inside, there'll be adequate roots to take care of the plant in the pot, and you'll get all the advantage of growing in the ground, or nearly so, probably 90% of the advantage of growing in the ground.
Have you ever heard about the air pots before? Well, the ones that have a lot.
Air pots are good, but if you live in the Southern California Basin or you live in the San Joaquin Valley, forget it.
Why was that? It's just too hot.
Because they're too hot. All the air pots have several ridges that look like a stepped pyramid upside down, and each one of those ridges is open, so the roots can come out and not circle. They come out and they're air pruned. When they come out of there, they die, and so you don't have the tendency to circle in the pot. But also they dry out like that. Now, if you're in Oregon, where they were developed for, and it rains every half the days in the summer, and it's wet all winter, it's wonderful. But they're
For California, it's just a little tough.
It's real tough. But these trees here are all just now starting to root in the ground. See that's got roots, and you see the growth this spring.
Oh, that's the
one
spring growth. That's
yeah.
the spring growth. Wow.
Yeah, I just cut close to 5,000 cuttings off of these, so they're looking a little like they're not as big as they are. But these all have trunk base diameters of between 1.5 inches and 1.75 inches.
You're talking about almost what, a foot of growth, foot plus of growth per season.
And this isn't, June's not over yet.
Oh wow. So yeah. So this still's
So
probably a foot and almost 2 feet probably when all said and done.
We typically fertilize once a year with a very expensive long-term time-release fertilizer. We will hit these junipers again in August, the end of August. They'll caliper. These plants will show an increase in caliper in the fall. That's typically when all deciduous, almost all plants will expand going into winter, and because they can store more food in the tissue. And so we'll feed them again once the weather starts to, we know the weather's going to break in a couple of weeks, and we'll get an extra push of growth and they'll go way out. It's the problem with growing kishu like that is it doesn't take a very big size stem and you can't wire it. Toyogawa will, same size stem will wire easily.
What is the potting mix that you use? You're suggesting potting mix, but what is the potting mix that you use here? I know we may not be able to get it, but what?
We use a ground bark, not ground wood material. It's a little more expensive. They call it, it can be called forest humus, or you can actually use seedling orchid bark if you don't have a lot of plants to do. And then I mix it with 20% of a clean sand, and that holds a lot of water. It develops a lot of small roots. And when you're in a large nursery pot, you try to put bonsai soil in there, it'll cost you an arm and a leg, and it won't do you any good at all. There's no advantage to it. The reason you use bonsai soil in a bonsai pot is because it drains well, and the pots are small, and if it doesn't drain right away, they drown things. But all the nursery production that's done in containers is done with that sort of soil and these plastic pots.
All right.
So you're reinventing the wheel. You try to put bonsai soil in there. So it's just not necessary.
Well, thanks a lot, Ed. That was a really important way to learn it. And I'll put the descriptions below of the air pots, or not air pots, the grow pots and the regular pots. So if you guys want to purchase some, you can get there. Thank you, Ed, for everything again.
Thanks for coming, Tom.